I did it. I finally did it. This has been like a year-long process for me of reading Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, and I finally did it. And I don't want people to think that I wasn't reading this book because it wasn't good, because it was. It was so good. It was the first book in a really long time that I've wanted to take the time with. That I read in stages, yes, but I kept going back to. Usually if I drop a book, it's because I'm not interested in it, and then I don't go back to it until like forever ago, and then I have to start it over. And that was not the case with Name of the Wind. So straight up, right now, I need to tell y'all that I didn't take this long with Name of the Wind because I didn't like it. I took this long with Name of the Wind because I was reading it on audio, so listening to it on audio, because I love the idea of having the story read to me, because the concept of Name of the Wind, if you don't know, is this guy named Kvothe telling his story to a chronicler who is writing it all down. So it is told in the first person, and it's literally told like a story. He is telling the story. And I wanted the audiobook because also with audiobooks, I don't skip forward. I don't skip passages. And Patrick Rothfuss's writing is good enough not to want to skip. That being said, I had my issues with it. And there were periods of it that were so slow. I had to put it down for a while, which is part of the reason why it took so long. So this is definitely not going to be one of those gushy reviews of like, Name of the Wind is the best book ever. But it's like really good. It deserves the praise that it gets. I will say that. And I'm the girl who does not like high fantasy novels, so that means something coming from me. Again, if you have not heard of Name of the Wind, where have you been living, first of all? Name of the Wind is a high fantasy book about a boy named Kvothe, who begins his life as an actor in an acting troupe with his parents until his parents are brutally murdered. And basically the story of Name of the Wind is him trying to figure out why. There is a magical elements. He becomes this crazy, powerful magician, in a colloquial term. And it sounds like a very simple story, but it is very involved, and it is very complex, and it's good. It's so good. I have people who read across the whole spectrum of reading, you know, only like high fantasy, usually only read sci-fi, usually only read literary fiction, usually only read YA, and we've all come together and we're like, Name of the Wind is so good. It's so good. Some of the best things about Name of the Wind are definitely the writing. Again, when you describe the plot of Name of the Wind, it sounds very simple, but Patrick Rothfuss has the ability to take a very simple concept and make it into an epic journey that is interesting, and you are twisting and turning, and it's the kind of idea that I try to use on YA all the time, is that people use all these cliches, and that's fine. You can use a cliche, but you have to write it interestingly, you know? Cliches are cliches because they happen a lot, and they happen a lot because, you know, there are things in life that actually happen a lot. But if you don't write them with any kind of new pizzazz, then they're still just stale and boring. You can use a cliche if you make it not stale and boring. And Patrick Rothfuss isn't using a cliche per se, but the story of a boy who loses his parents, who goes to magic school. It's not new, but when he writes it in a way that is uniquely him. And that is what makes Name of the Wind, I think, amazing on its base level. That this story is uniquely, beautifully written, and that will sustain a reader, like even if through the dumbest cliches, you know what I mean? I ask you like you're sitting in front of me and can answer me. It is a high fantasy book, and so it does involve different cities, magical systems, religions, the setup of the school. It's all very involved, and it was presented in a way that didn't make me want to like gouge my eyes out, which is usually what I find in high fantasy, is that they spend so long explaining all these little details and you're just like, I don't care. Can we please move on with the story? And for the most part in Name of the Wind, I didn't feel like I was being hit over the head with unnecessary information. Information and history was presented in a timely and efficient manner. So I got what I needed to know when I needed to know it, and I wasn't being like just drop kicked with information for the most part. There were definitely some sections where that felt like it was the case, but it wasn't like, for me, high fantasy is usually just that. And it only happened in a couple of places in Name of the Wind, and that's like amazing for someone who is clearly presenting such an intricate world system. I also really like the character of Kvothe. He is a sassy know-it-all who is very book smart, but can sometimes just be so stupid. And I think that often rings true to his character. You know, he's very smart, but he's not smart in every way. And I think sometimes the smart character is just good at everything. And Kvothe is, you know, he's a bit dumb, he's a bit egotistical, he does not know how to have human interactions, but he's also very smart and he can figure things out very quickly. And so his smart feels more natural than your normal genius, because it actually feels like he has earned his genius. You feel like he's definitely taking the time to learn it. Some of it is natural, but some of it is him taking the time. And then also when he, you know, gets some comeuppance or can't interact properly with another human being, you're like, oh yeah, you know, you spend so much time focusing on this one smart thing that you do have some weak points. And that's really nice to see. He's just funny. He is really, really funny. And the sassafras, without like the YA sass, which is just like every single sentence I say is super sassy, which I love, but Kvothe sass comes out very naturally in small doses, which is really nice as well. I did have super issues with the pacing of this book. I felt like there were periods where it was definitely ramping up, like the beginning was just like ramped up really, really fast, and like the scene that's happening where Kvothe is telling the story is also a new story that's happening basically. And then he goes back in time and tells the story of how he lost his parents, and you're like, whoa, all these crazy things are happening. And then there's this giant section at the front of the book where he's an orphan on the streets, and it drags on and on and on and on, and there's like nothing in particular that I felt like he was learning, nothing in particular that I felt like we were learning. It just went on and on and on and on, and that was a huge point for me where I just put the book down because I was like, I'm so bored, and it just kept going. That definitely did not need to be as long as it was. I know some people who love that section. You're welcome to it. Definitely not me. The middle portion is really good, and then you get to the end, and again, there's this one section that is really just elongated for no reason, and especially when you're like, all of these crazy things are happening. Why is this taking so long to get to the interesting stuff again? And again, personal choice. I know for some people that is not the case. But man, it just felt like it stretched out that end of the book period in a way that it shouldn't have been at all. This is also one book where I liked all of the side characters except for one, and her name is Denna. And I don't want to talk about Denna too much because she pops up in the latter half of the book, and a lot of the scenes with her would be super spoilery. But I have heard that you either love Denna or you hate Denna, and I am in the camp of hating Denna. She is annoying, and she is convenient, and she is annoying. And I feel this very strongly, and if you'd like to talk to me about it, you can talk to me about it down in the comments if you know what I'm talking about, because again, they're like, you only feel one way about Denna, and it's very strongly one or the other. I've not talked to anybody who's like, yeah, I mean, she has her faults, but like, no. People have very strong feelings about Denna, and I think that it's funny. But I'm definitely in that camp, and I could write you an essay about why Denna is a super annoying female character. But since she's so prominent in the latter half of the book, I spent a lot of that part just going like, just die, Denna. It's literally all of my Goodreads updates are. It's just Denna. Denna, no. Go away. Leave me with Kvothe, please. Other than that, I mean, I am really happy that I read it. I've already started Wise Man's Fear. It will probably take me just as long as it took me to read Name of the Wind to read Wise Man's Fear, which is fine because maybe by the time I finish Wise Man's Fear, it'll only be a couple more years before we get the third book, because Patrick Rothfuss is George R.R. Martining us all, except for he has more of a chance to stay alive before the books are not finished. But anyways, I did not think that I would be recommending Name of the Wind, but I am. And I think that in itself is the biggest credit that this book can get from me and from a lot of other people, is that there are so many people that I know, and I know that I said this, but I'm going to say it again, so many people that I know that love very different things that love this book. And it's cross-appealing, it's a great story, it's a fantastic world, it's a great main character, it's a kind of high fantasy that doesn't drag for the most part, it's those two places, and it presents you with a story which in its nitty-gritty bullet points is very familiar, but it presents a unique, interesting, and beautifully written version of it, which is really what you want. Books are all the same story if you really get down to the nitty-gritty bullet points, but it's how they tell them. And Patrick Rothfuss has such a command of language, and he tells it just amazing. So you guys can look forward to, like, in 2 years when I actually finish A Wise Man's Fear and review that one. But in the meantime, if you've been on the fence about Name of the Wind, just read it. Just start it. Slog through those slow parts if you're like me. They're worth it at the end. That's all I have for you guys now. Thanks. Bye.